Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app. Hub24 is on a mission to empower advisors to deliver better financial futures for their clients. They are dedicated to customer service excellence and delivering innovative product solutions that create value for advisors and their clients. These are just some of the reasons why advisors rate them number one for overall satisfaction and why their managed portfolio solution has been rated best in market 5 years running. Hub24 believes nothing happens in isolation. So they're working together with advisors, licensees, and industry leaders to leverage their data and technology expertise to help solve key challenges in the delivery of financial advice, so more Australians can access cost-effective advice. Welcome back to the XY Advisor Podcast. I'm Fraser Jack, and today I'm joined by Kevin Smith. G'day, Kevin.
G'day, Fraser. How are you?
Tremendous. Thank you for asking. Welcome to the show. Now, we managed to catch up in person in South Australia not so long ago as the borders were available to be opened, and I think Queensland have opened up now. But thank you for coming on. You've got a really interesting business model, which I want to explore, but actually, let's just quickly give you a quick overview of that current business model.
Yeah, so I run a business called Pension Services, and what we essentially do is we deal with Centrelink and Age Care matters on behalf of clients. So it does sit outside the advice realm. I did come from an advice background, but it's more an admin service, completing paperwork, following up with Centrelink, and just picking the fight when we need to pick the fight with Centrelink and having some wins.
Yeah, now we'll get into how this happened in a second, but obviously that's a pretty valuable service for clients, both for financial advisors and accountants and other professionals, and a lot of people going through the pain. I love the way you call yourself on your LinkedIn profile a Centrelink Stress Remover as your job title. I think that's a great way to put it. Let's go back in time. Tell us about your journey. You started off as an advisor, but tell us how you got into advice in the first place.
Advice, I think, was really a little bit of dumb luck to a certain degree. I left school, finished university and didn't really know what I was going to do. Moved overseas and worked for some big institutions, State Street, and done a lot of settlements for them and done a lot of back-end office for them, and didn't enjoy being stuck in an office all day. After a while, I came back to Australia, landed a job with BT at the time, and done some of their reconciliation, some of their margin lending just before the GFC. And, they weren't worried about, let's write off $20 million on the reconciliation. Nothing's going to happen to the market. And that was probably 2006, 2005. And then got an opportunity 2007 to join CBA with their graduate program. So done that for a while. Within 9 months, they're like, you're an advisor, away you go, and learned very quickly how to become an advisor. Moved to country Victoria for a couple of years, and that was my journey into advice, and it grew from there. So I was with big institutions for most of my career, all my career, and it worked really well. I did leave the industry 2 years ago from that perspective. I got an opportunity to leave, and I wasn't really confident, I guess, in where advice was sort of going. I wasn't happy with all the changes that were continuously happening. I'd been through FOFA, I'd been through this, I'd been through that, I'd been through removal of commissions and all the rest of it, which were all good things for clients, but I was finding it was getting harder and harder just to provide good, simple advice to clients. And I was also finding that clients were having struggles with simple things. We had a lot of clients that struggled with budgeting, cash flow. We had a lot of clients that struggled and just struggling to deal with Centrelink. So I got the opportunity to leave advice in June 2009 and took it.
June 2019?
19, yes, sorry, yes, 19.
Yep.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yep. And sort of explored what I was going to do. And that's been sort of that. And I guess from that journey, I went in and done a lot of more financial coaching. So around setting people budgets, holding them accountable to that budget, which was more so, probably more important than the actual budget itself, was just that accountability and kicking their butt on sort of a monthly basis.
Yep.
And that was going well. We've done a little bit of corporate financial health as well. So we went to a couple of businesses and said, hey, this is what we can do. This we can help your clients. And that worked well. And then COVID hit and everything sort of shut down very quickly.
Yeah, so this is I just want to explore this part a little bit more. So you left becoming you're a private client advisor. I think it probably at IPAC at that time.
Yep.
Then you decided to start your own business. Tell me about that moment where you decided to go out on your own and have your own business.
Yeah, I'd always wanted to run my own business. From my perspective, I'd always wanted that experience. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. So what actually happened is I actually put my name into an incubator through Hub Australia, not
Yep.
Hub 24, but Hub Australia,
Yep.
and one of the local universities, and they put me through a 3-month incubator, and it was all about how to start, how to grow your business. They provided some office space for 12 months, and they put us through this course about just validating your ideas and seeing what works. And I found that really useful. From my perspective, it was a great grounding, and it also taught you, look, if you can validate your idea, run with it. If it's working, keep going. If it's not, you don't have to be married to it.
Yeah, it's a fail fast type concept with any particular startup. You trial and error, you try and test, and you measure and you move. You're agile. You sort of go, okay, great. Well, that part's not working. What is? Who's going to buy? And everything's around. Don't build too much, right? Just build enough to find a paying customer.
Correct. And we were getting some traction with financial coaching. It was working, but it wasn't growing at a great speed. And I guess I came from it where I knew I had a certain runway, and I was looking at that runway down the barrel, and I was sort of like, oh, we've got 6 months to go. COVID sort of pulled a few contracts. And what I actually done is I actually put up a couple of videos around, hey, this is what JobKeeper is, this is what JobSeeker is. When that all sort of came out, put it on YouTube, put it on Facebook, and said to people, look, if you're having trouble, book a link in my diary. Here's the calendar link. Bang, away you go. And within a couple of days, I had 10 appointments in my diary. I'm like, oh, shit. What am I going to do now? That was okay, I've got appointments in my diary. And everyone's like, how do I deal with Centrelink? Can't do this, can't do that. I'm like, come on, it's not that hard. Like, it is, but it's not. I dealt with Centrelink for clients for, the best part of 13 or 14 years. Knew, not inside out, but had a good enough background, I guess, with advice and being able to read the legislation and say, this is what the rules are, this is where it sits, this is where it isn't. So help those clients. And then I guess that background and the course that I'd done through Flinders University, I sort of poked the bear a little bit just to see what was there. And I went to a couple of advisors I knew and said, hey, do you enjoy dealing with this? And they're like, no, absolutely not. And it was probably a little bit more animated than that. And there was a few F-bombs in there. And then I went to a few accountants and said, look, do you know what's going on here? Do you know anything about this? Do you want to be dealing with this? They're like, absolutely not. We don't want to touch it. And so I was like, okay, there's something there. And then one of the advisors phoned me back the next week and said, hey, I've got your first client for you.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah. You got to love the test and measure. And you're absolutely right about those, the Centrelink, it's a very rules focused business. It's not a business, I guess. It's a very rules focused organization. So if you know the rules, then you pretty much, you know the entitlements and you're able to work your way around it.
Yeah, correct. And that's what we just do is, if you know the rules, you can play the game. And it's like anything, right? Like it's no different to when you're in advice. If you know the rules, you can play the game. And that's where we came from, is we're just like, well, if we don't know, we'll pull the legislation, we'll read the legislation, and then we'll start pushing back. And we've had some really good wins on that as well, around mistakes, around debts, around, challenging them when they think they're right or they've made the wrong decision. And it's worked really well and clients like it. So it's been good.
I think one of the keys here is that you're approaching this from an analytical point of view. You're not the emotional seat that the client's in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you're able to go, well, I can see this fact and that fact and the other fact, and I can also then use my skill as that you developed as a planner to be able to then relate to the client on their emotional level, and you're working as that translator, I guess, that maybe people in Centrelink can't quite get yet.
Correct, and it's still, like, I guess from my perspective, it's my client, right? So I'm still looking after them. I've got their best interests in terms of what the best outcome for them is. And it's not just another number, whereas I think sometimes it can, if you're in a call center, it could just be another number. It's somebody else on the phone, whereas at least I've got pushing for them to get the right outcome. And that's good.
And so essentially your financial coaching business just morphed in this very short space of time into this new, the supply of something that there was a demand for?
Yeah, absolutely. To the extent where we have essentially wound it all up. I think the website's probably still there, but that's about it. In terms of taking on clients, bits and pieces, we don't do it anymore. It's all the demand and I guess the need for this sort of service is that high that we're finding it's just too busy to run two of them at this point in time.
Yeah, fair enough. And so tell us about when that was. Like, how you mentioned COVID hit, there was the demand. How quickly did you then pivot your offering to now becoming a new business?
I reckon I registered the name, and it's funny because I made that mistake, and I don't know if it's a mistake or if I thought I knew where the market was, and I guess I registered the name, I think the first week of May 2020, and I assumed it was going to be all the oldies. That was my assumption, and that's where I figured it would be. So I figured it was going to be all the 65-year-olds or 66-year-olds coming up to age pension, too stressed about it. Somebody else would do it.
And so the name was Pension Services?
Correct, yeah. And so I figured, well, it makes sense. You can't use age pension, you can't use Centrelink, and the pension services sort of works. And that was the initial couple of clients. And then people said, oh, can you deal with this? Yeah, we can. We can deal with a job seeker claim. Can you help us with family tax? Yes, we can. And so it's just evolved from there, which eventually we'll probably have to rebrand or change it or something like that. But that's not a focus at the moment. It's just keep doing what we're doing and do it well.
Yeah, well, the name's certainly not putting people off at the moment, I guess.
No, it's not. Absolutely not.
Yeah. And so your model is to then work with other professionals that refer you clients?
Yep. So we work with a lot of advisors, accountants, lawyers, especially estate planning lawyers. There's a lot of complexity around that where here's what the rules are. You go and give the advice to the client. If you need us to help implement it, I had a lawyer recently who came to me and she's like, look, I've got this aged care entry form. I've spent 6 hours on it and I can't bill the client for that. I'm like, well, give it to us. I said, we can actually get what the client's record is in Centrelink, make sure it's up to date, and then it's a simple form. It's not that hard. Oh, well, I spent 5 hours on it. I'm like, well, that was a waste of time, right? And you can't bill for that. So it's a much simpler solution when you're doing it day in, day out. You know what you're looking for, you know the questions to ask, and you know when you're not getting necessarily the right answer as well.
Yeah, I want to get into that in a minute, but you mentioned there that you become an authorised person, I guess, on their account.
Yeah, so we go in as a nominee for the client, so it's a correspondence nominee in most cases. Sometimes we'll use permission to inquire, just depending, and then we've got the ability to interact on the client's behalf. So dealing with any questions Centrelink have got, doing any updates on the client's account, completing any applications for the client, we can do all that, and then we can go in and push them and make sure that, hey, it's moving in the right direction or it's moving in the expected direction.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you can push where it's wrong, or at the end of the day, I think Centrelink's probably like every other organisation. It's full of human beings, and they may or may not have been trained properly, and they may be new or all sorts of other things, so they don't always get it right.
No.
You must see some things.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think when the pandemic hit, I know here in Adelaide, one of the outsourced IT providers went and hired 200 or 300 people out north and 200 or 300 people down south and essentially put them in a call centre and said, answer the phone. Gave them 2 weeks training on here's how to Google the answer in the internal systems, but didn't give them any real training in payments. So they were sort of flying a little bit blind and saying, no, you're not eligible for this, or no, you're not eligible for that. So there was instances where we've found that, debts have been raised that shouldn't have been raised. I had one recently where they've dragged a client's rent assistance up from 3 or 4 years ago and said, well, that's a debt. You shouldn't have been claiming rent assistance because you're living on the boat and the company paid it. And we're like, well, the client gave you all the right forms. He'd done all the right declarations. You can't then come back and say, hey, just because the accountant's claimed it as well, it wasn't the client's decision, it's been an accounting decision. And they sort of agreed and turned around and said, well, we can wipe that $5,000 straight off, which is a good outcome for the client. We've had a couple other cases where they've said, yes, you're entitled to this, pay the benefit, come back and said, oh, actually, we made a mistake. And we're like, well, you've raised the debt too late. There's some parameters around when the debt can be raised and what sort of notification period there should be and all the rest of it. You've raised it too late. We think it should be taken off, and away we go. And they have been doing that. So it's been good.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We talk about the value of advice so often in financial advice, and the value of having somebody that going to bat for you with the Centrelink. I think it's a pretty big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's massive. Like, I had one of the accountants that initially I spoke to, she said, oh, look, I've got a client. All she wants when COVID hit is the $750. She wants the $750 payment so she can buy a new shoes, a new handbag. And so we went through the whole process, and I said, look, I think the client's entitled to a bit more than $750. I said to the client, are you happy with me just to not play with it, but put in a couple of different claims and see how it goes? And the client said, yeah, just do what you need to. And so Centrelink turned around, and convincing Centrelink that somebody has a negative taxable income is actually really hard. It doesn't match the computer. You can't put a negative in. They just don't understand it. So we had to overcome that. No. Yeah, computer says no. All right. So we had to overcome that, and we got around that. And I said to the client, look, it's getting close. It's getting close. We're just waiting on a couple of things. And eventually, so they turned around and paid the family tax benefit for 1920 when she hadn't done her tax return on the Friday. I'm like, guys, you can't do this. She hasn't done her tax return. We don't want the money yet. I'm claiming 1819. She's in financial distress for her. So they've paid her $15,000 on the Friday for family tax for 1920. I've given them a rocket on the Friday afternoon saying, you've screwed this all up. You need to fix this. And so they've dropped another $15,500 into her account on the Sunday. And she's like, shit, Kevin, what do I do with this? I said, look, they might claw some of it back. Let's just wait and see what your taxes turn out. I said, just stick it in the offset. But this same client then got knocked back for job seeker, and we appealed that, and somebody hadn't done the data entry right. And then within a couple of months, I said, oh, we'll slowly take this. How quickly you need the money? She said, oh, it's not urgent now. I've got the other money. And then she got a whole heap of back pay for the job seeker. So she picked up another $22,000. So in the space of probably 9 months, maybe 10 months, she picked up about 50 odd thousand, which she was entitled to, and all the rest of it, and made a massive difference in her life. And stuff like that's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing story. And obviously, there's there is the fact that there's obviously a reason why she needs that money in the first place.
Yep.
But did that client come from you from an advisor or through
from an accountant?
Yep,
from an accountant that just was like, I don't have time to learn. I don't know how to do it. Can you just manage it for us?
Yeah, and I take it that accountant's referring you plenty more clients?
Yes. Yeah, and we get we get a lot of their complex stuff. So a lot of their stuff where there's trusts involved or companies involved, and it adds more work to the actual claim. And it probably, a lot of clients don't go through the process because they think it's too hard. I'll just leave it. I'll just spend what I've got. So yeah, so that accountant sent us a lot more work along those lines, where we're dealing with pretty complex clients.
And what's your business model? Do you charge then for that initial work, or just per work, or is it how do you then create a business model around charging clients?
So I tried to figure it out the fairest way to clients, and that's probably been the hardest thing for me to figure out is where's the fairness and how do you charge? Because I don't get a magic number to Centrelink, unfortunately. So I still have the queues, and the team, like some of the people that do some work for me, still have the 45-minute waits on hold and all the rest of it. So we just have to manage that. I guess the biggest thing is we deal with 5 or 10 cases at a time, so it makes it a little bit easier. So we just went down here's the flat fee. This is what we're going to charge, and away we go, and see what sticks. And it has stuck. With 9 times out of 10, we're making money on it. Yes, there's the occasional case where it blows out of the water because something's come out of left field, or there's been an incorrect decision made or something like that. But we've just stuck to, hey, here's the flat fee. It's fair and equitable, and away we go from there. And when we look at different pricings, then we start saying, well, this is a bit more complex. There's more forms here. We need to charge more for that. And I think in the last 18 months, I've had 2 clients have said, no, I don't want to pay the fee. That's fine. There's been no real pushback in terms of, hey, it's too expensive or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the fees just related to their level of stress and
Absolutely. Yep.
more so than their level of return.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's not significant. We're charging sort of simple age pension applications. We're charging $660. So it's not huge amounts of money. I speak to, there's a couple of advisors locally that've been sending me a fair bit of business, and they said, look, for us to even touch that, it's $990. There's a couple others that are saying it's $1,100 because there's different cost layers.
Yep.
And different things they've got to factor into. So if we can do it at a reduced cost and be an outsourced provider to an advisor or an accountant, or just be a direct referral arrangement, then that's great.
It makes sense. So if you're spending 45 minutes on a wait time to get hold of a human on the other end of the phone, I'm assuming if you get hold of a good one, then you're spending the rest of the day on the phone to that person, talking through all of your cases.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's I had somebody a couple of weeks ago up in, I think it was up in Toowoomba, and it was one of the processing centres, and I was like, look, I just need this fixed and this fixed. And I'm like, I've got one more. And she's like, wait a sec, you've said that 5 times now. I'm like, yeah, but I've just got one more. And so within an hour and a half, I was able to knock off about 10 cases. And I was like, look, this is what the situation is. This has been put into complex assessments. It shouldn't be there. Can you pull it back? She's like, oh, yeah, it shouldn't be there. I'm like, cool. Let's not wait 3 months for it to be rejected. So it does make a massive impact who you get on the phone. And that's sometimes the biggest challenge is some of those people at the other end of the phone don't necessarily know. And that's okay. Like, it's not okay, but it is okay. You've just got to sort of hang up and yeah, all right, we'll go again and see what happens. I had somebody just recently, and like, it's not my money, right? Like, it's my business, but it's not my money. And I guess this goes back to what you were talking about around the emotion. And I said, look, we've got this claim in. Clients earned 78 grand last year. They're entitled to a pension. Both of them were still working at this point in time. And she said, no, they're over the income limit. I said, okay. So the income limit, if they're working, is about 90,000. And she said, oh, no, they're still over the limit. She said, you need to start, put a new application. I said, no, I don't. I said, I can do an appeal. I said, I want to lodge an appeal. No, you can't. You've got to do a new application. I'm like, no. Can you just please lodge an appeal? She's like, you're getting aggressive on the phone with me. I'm like, no. This is just me talking. Like, I'm not getting aggressive. I'm just telling you you're wrong. And she's like, look, I'm going to terminate the call now. Okay, sure. No worries. And she eventually hung up on me, and I'm like, okay, fine. Picked up the phone. Hey, and it was somebody in the same call center. I said, hey, look, I've just got off the phone to somebody. I want to lodge this appeal. This is what's going on. It's financial hardship. I need this moved quickly. And sure enough, I got a phone call on the Tuesday. Yep, we're processing this. I don't understand why they rejected it. This client's always been eligible. I said, yeah, that's what my numbers said, and that's what the legislation says, but they've just knocked it out of the park. No, we'll get it processed. And literally they turned around and paid the client essentially the next day. It was about $5,000 each in back pay. So if the client had been navigating that themselves, a lot of clients would just give up. And that's what we find is I've tried 2 or 3 times to get this. I'm struggling with this. And they just send out a letter saying, no, there's no reason. And then they give up. Whereas we try and push and say, well, why is it? What's the reason? One at the moment seems to be, I've got a couple of clients that we're putting carers allowance and carer payments in, and all of a sudden they want to ID mum and dad who might be 80, 85, and they're just rejecting it without saying, hey, saying it's optional ID. Actually, it's mandatory to ID mum and dad now, and they're just saying in a letter, hey, it's been rejected. There's no other further information, and clients say, well, I'll just give up.
Yeah, coming back to this, you mentioned the word struggle.
Yep.
That level of stress can be out of proportion to the logical side of it. When somebody thinks or gets a letter from the government, essentially, saying no.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. Like the stress levels that the clients have, and for us just to say, don't worry about it, we've got it, it's fine, or we've already, in a lot of cases, we'll get the letter a week before the client gets it because we'll get them electronically. And the client will phone up and freak out and be like, hey, this letter's just come. And I'm like, don't worry, we've already taken care of it. Just rip it up, throw it in the bin. What do you mean? I'm like, remember we asked you for this 2 weeks ago? Yeah, we've already dealt with this. Just file it. But they said this, so it's already dealt with. Don't worry about it. So it is valuable from that client side of things. It's very valuable to them. And we always sort of say, look, you can go and do this yourself. You can go and do this yourself. You're eligible, go and do it. You can go and do it. And 9 times out of 10, the reaction comes back of, no, I don't want to deal with them. If you can deal with it and pay for that, if that pain point can be removed, then very quickly they're happy to pay for it, and away we go. in a lot of cases, we book appointments for our clients. If they've got to go and get ID'd, let's not go and sit them in Centrelink for an hour and a half, 2 hours waiting for them to be called. When you're available, let's book an appointment in, lock the appointment in, confirm it with the client. They're in and out in 20 minutes. It's a great experience because they've had that versus Joe on the street that walks in and says, hey, I've got this pension paperwork, and sits there for an hour and a half and just looks at it and thinks, what do I do? Yep. I'll never forget when I first started advising, one of the advisors that I worked with, he said, this is up in Mildura, he said, you ever go on the toilets in Centrelink? I said, no, why would I go to the toilets in Centrelink? He says, when you do, just go and check the lights out. I said, what do you mean? He said, they're all blue lights. I'm like, why are they blue lights in Centrelink? He said, so that people that are going into claim can't go and shoot up while they're sitting there waiting for the paperwork to be done. I'm like, hell, they can't see their veins if the blue lights are on, like it was one of those things. And I'm just like, that's not the way it should be, right? That's not a great experience.
That's the level of the customer service interaction. Yeah. We don't want our clients shooting up on their way in. Yeah, good. Great call. So from your point of view, from your business point of view, you're really taking people from that moment of struggle and, upset or fear factor and relieving their stress. That must feel good from your point of view.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And the reward and just the release of anxiety that can, sometimes it is hard because clients expect it to be done tomorrow, and I'm still dealing with a government organisation, right? Like in the middle of the pandemic, I was finding that pension applications were getting processed in 2 weeks. It was just bang. We had people in processing. The last sort of 6 weeks since Melbourne and Sydney have been in lockdown, pension applications have slowed right to the bottom. They've been processing the COVID payments and disaster payments and all those sorts of things first, and they've been prioritising stuff. So that level of frustration is there with clients. We try and set those expectations that, hey, if you've got a trust, it's going to be 3 months at least before somebody picks it up, but it might be 6 months, because it's complex assessments. It's a black hole. We can't get into them. We can jump up and down as much as we want, but we're not going to get to speak to somebody in complex assessments to deal with any of this. They'll phone us when they're ready, and they do. They will phone and say, hey, about this case, this is what it is, and away we go from there. But the level of satisfaction is really good, and the ability just to remove that stress. We're finding more and more we're getting people coming to us with aged care entry paperwork, and it's a hugely stressful time because mum and or dad is going into aged care, and they're like, I've seen the place, we need to organise this, can you do this paperwork for us and just get it taken away because they've just given us 26 pages and we don't know how to do it. We can take a guess, but we're not sure if we get it wrong. And we've had a few where people have got it wrong, people haven't done it. I had one the other day where, the son's pretty busy, he works for AFP, and they've obviously had a busy 2 years. He said, look, I just haven't got around to this paperwork. I've been back and forth, and I think we filled something out wrong at one stage. And they ticked a box somewhere that said they had a life interest in their own house, which they didn't. They just owned the house. And so it led to this sort of 18 months of backwards and forwards with Centrelink. And in the meantime, they just said, well, mum's going to pay the $255 a day, maximum fee for aged care. We've jumped in, said, look, it'll take us a while to fix, and we've got to wait for quarterly reviews and this, that, and the other. But they picked up a $43,500 refund on aged care fees. So that makes a big difference to a client situation.
Wow. It's incredible. Great stories, aren't they, that can come out of this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned sort of setting expectations is a big part of this. When you first meet with someone, you can say to them, the rules are this, but it's going to take 3 months at this particular point in time to you're really setting that expectation that then again calms people and says, okay, well, we know the rules are X. We're probably going to get back paid. We're going to be okay with this.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we have to. Is probably the biggest thing is setting that expectation up front, because I think, well, and there's, we have to correct a few of those expectations. Yeah, and it's not just around claim time, but one of the big ones we find is that Centrelink can see what's in my bank account. Classic clients, but they can see what's in my bank account. No, they can't. There's still privacy. There's still this. There's still that. But there's that expectation of, well, Centrelink know what I have. It's the government. They know everything. No, they don't. You go from two different extremes. We've got some clients that are, I've got one or two that are sort of tinfoil hat wearing people that don't trust anything, can't disclose anything. I'm like, well, we can't deal with that. If you're not going to disclose it to us, we're not part of this, right? Like, no way. And I've got others that, the government can see everything. They know what my tax is. The ATO can see this. Centrelink know that. And I'm like, they can get the data, but it takes a process. It takes time. It doesn't get picked up straight away.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is really important to set those expectations.
And, we're talking about, in a lot of cases, claims that have gone in favour of the client. But of course, that's not always the case. There's got to be cases where people are coming to you because they have raised the debt, or there's a debt to be paid, or they don't want to, or they need to fall on their sword in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is times when we look at claims and we're like, look, we don't think it's going to get up. And generally, I'll say to clients, look, we're happy to do a little bit of work and do it pro bono and have a look at it and see if there is something we can do. If there's not, we're not going to charge you. I had somebody that's in New South Wales trying to claim for a pension, and he didn't tell us the whole truth, I guess is probably what happened in the background. We're like, yeah, you can get a pension, there's no issue. And what sort of worked out through the course of it, and we took it through to complaints and this, that, and the other, is he'd had a fairly substantial compensation payment within 18 months that he didn't disclose to us. And that precluded him for X amount of time because it was a replacement of income and all the rest of it. And it was a tough situation. We had local MP onto us and this, that, and the other. And we're like, look, this guy's just received $250,000 18 months ago. That's a lot of money. And he can't substantiate where it's gone. He's still renting. He's still doing these sorts of things. If he can give me some receipts, then we can start working on it. And that was sort of Centrelink's argument, but he couldn't fabricate anything, or he couldn't not fabricate, but he couldn't produce anything to support it. And we eventually said to the client, look, unless you can actually provide us some support and a leg to stand on, we can't fight this. And we try to be smart. So I guess with a lot of the other work we do, I'm finding we're doing a lot of carers payments, carers allowance stuff. We've sort of built a tool that we can pre-assess clients and figure out where they sort of sit, just using basic sort of software and spreadsheets and bits and pieces like that. But we can essentially say, yes, you're going to be eligible for a carer's allowance. Yes, you're going to be eligible for a carer's payment. And it takes away that whole process of, let's jump in, do a whole heap of work, go to doctors, get this done, get that done, wait 6 weeks, and then it's rejected. So we've been pretty clever like that, just to figure out what the legislation says, figure out how they score it, build a tool to help us to make us more efficient.
I love a good spreadsheet tool. How good are spreadsheets when you create little calculators and you can just say to people, oh, there's an answer, and people think you're incredible.
Yeah.
Now there has been a lot of disruption for Centrelink, obviously, with COVID and payments and lockdowns here, there, and everywhere, and new rules coming in and uncertainty, and then not knowing how long that's going to be for, and so. What sort of strain has that put on Centrelink as far as you mentioned, trying to get these the complex assessments done?
Oh, it's been immense. It's pushed a lot of the complex stuff out a bit. I think it's getting better now, but it was putting a lot of pressure on some of those case officers, and you don't put them on a pedestal, but they're sort of these, they're one of these rare breeds that you speak, because they've got to be an accountant to read these financials in a lot of cases, or they've got to have that knowledge, and it's not just the average person. So what we were finding was happening was the simple ones were going through fairly quickly. Anything that went to complex, they were just getting a huge volume. So that was what was pushing it out to sort of 3-6 months. And then they'd ask for more information, then it'd go back into the queue. So that was the frustrating bit for a lot of people, I think. It is getting better, but it's slow. It's still slow.
Yeah. And do you see your business continuing down that pensioner line, or do you think you're getting it so much more with carer payments and family tax benefits and stuff?
I think we'll still pick up all sorts of areas. It's funny because word of mouth's amazing in terms of your clients. And, we've had a number of clients where I've got one at the moment that's sitting on my desk and we're sort of helping through, and he's like, well, look, we've got married. I've got a company. This is what the situation is. We've got 2 separate houses. They've just given me 100 pages worth of documentation to fill out. I don't know what I'm doing. The accountant doesn't want to do it. Can you at least get it through? And again, setting that expectation of, hey, look, I can look at your financials pretty quickly. You're going to have to pay some of this back, or if not all of it. Let's start hiding it away, or not hiding it away. Let's start putting it in the bank and just sitting it there so that if and when the debt does come, you can pay it and away you go. I'm comfortable with most of the stuff to do with Centrelink, with the exception of child support. I think everyone asks me, can you do that? I'm like, no, I think it's a hiding to nothing. And I think it's a lot more dealing with Centrelink's sort of emotional here level. Dealing with child support, I think, is up about there in terms of people paying, people receiving, not knowing how the formulas work, and then the child support agency, which is run by Services Australia, doesn't have the best reputation and can be seen as ruthless at times.
Yeah, and people are looking for explanations that you might not be able to give.
Correct.
So just like on the amount of information and knowledge, as you said, you've been through many years of dealing and looking at it. Did you find that was a difficult process to get your head around all that sort of legislation and what the rights and stuff were, or do you think it's actually a lot bit easier than what people think?
I think if you've got the time, it's relatively easy. It's probably, there has been a steep learning curve with a couple of little things where something's been thrown out. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why are you asking for that? Or it's just been unexpected, but then you learn from that. I had a client pass away, which is fine, but we're doing some work for him. And then all of a sudden that cancels our nominee status. And so it sort of ground everything to a halt. And they said, oh, look, you can do this, get a letter signed by power of attorney and not power of attorney, executor, and away you go. And you go to somebody else, and it's that same classic thing. Two people tell you two different answers, And so that there's learnings that we've sort of put together and started building out sort of here's how the process works so that we know for next time, hey, if that person dies, we've got to pull up stumps. We can't do any more, or we need the executor to do the phoning. We can provide all the information, but we can't get any further than that.
Yeah, it becomes a new engagement with the executor to give them the update and what we can or can't do. And right,
correct.
Okay. Yeah, so then, so as your business grows, and I'll ask you about that in a second, but as your business is getting more mature, you're getting more and more of a knowledge bank of what you need to have and know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, and we're trying to make it easier on ourselves, I guess, from that perspective. So I run a lot of process stuff. So we use a lot of like Google Sites, recorded videos. This is how we do it. This is what needs to be done, so that you've got it there for later. Or, hey, this is what's happened. This is a complex case. Bang, bang, bang. Here's the issues that we faced. So that the hardest thing is I don't want everything stuck up in my head. I don't want to be that sole practitioner that has got all the knowledge, but it's also the biggest bottleneck in the business.
Yeah, really good call if you want to look at scaling, which I'll ask you about in a second. But tell me about that, getting that information out of your head in using video.
Yeah, so a lot of Loom to just get it out, and then just building out processes around it. Simple things like if somebody's to walk in, we're talking to a couple of interns and bits and pieces at the moment, but here's how you fill out the basic form. Here's where this number needs to go. Here's where that, and it is fairly straightforward. But if there's a resource there, it's not 15 questions. Hey, Kevin, how do I do this? Hey, Kevin, how do I do that? Here's the video. Check that resource. If it doesn't fit in this box, come and ask me. And I think it's that thing of you need to get out of that mindset of being a technician and trying to do it all the time and start thinking, well, am I going to be a business owner, and should I be doing the same thing twice or three times or four times, or can I find a better way that I should be concentrating on, hey, this is the technical bit where I'm really valuable. Let's find other people to do. In 12 months' time, I can't be sitting on the phone for the amount of hours that we sit on the phone just now. I've spent, I think I said to my wife the other day, I've spent 570 odd hours on the phone this year, right? And I don't like the phone. There's 6,500 phone calls there, right? Like, it's not much fun.
You should be asking for an office in the Centrelink office and just saying, "Can I work from your office?" And I'll just work off your systems. Save me phoning in and taking up a call center person.
Correct. And it would be magic if that was the engagement, right? If it would be good if we could get some sort of engagement like that, where, hey, we're nominee for X many clients. If we can get a direct line to somebody in processing that can actually move stuff through, then that's fine, because we're not asking stupid questions.
And you'd think, I'm just trying this on, you'd think if I was running Centrelink, that would be a great thing, because we would actually process a lot more and I would need less people.
Correct. And it would be more efficient for everyone. But government and efficiency doesn't always add up together.
Careful, they're listening.
Yeah, of course they are.
No, they can hear you. Tell us about the business itself. How's it grown over the last sort of 12 or 18 months since it's really been?
Yeah, it's growing probably a little bit stupidly. The first 3 to 4 months, it was sort of like, a couple of clients would come in now and again, and accounts would phone me up. Now we've sort of been working and been concentrating on, hey, let's concentrate on advisors, accountants, lawyers, even just locally, and we've got interstate ones as well, and it's grown rapidly, and I've done some cheeky things. So my parents took off in a caravan to Tasmania probably 6 months ago, and I turned around and said, here's a whole heap of flyers, go and stick them up on every notice board that you go past on the way to Tasmania. And they've done it, right? And sure enough, we get phone calls now from Tasmania saying, hey, I saw your poster, where are you based? Oh, we're based in Adelaide. Why is the poster up on the ferry terminal going across to, I can't even think it is, Bruny Island? Yeah, Bruny Island. And literally clients have come in like that. Like it's incredible. So we've just been a little bit, not cheeky, but taking advantage.
I think that's ingenious. That's not cheeky. That's great. That's a great little guerrilla marketing campaign.
Yeah, so we've used that. I've done it with in-laws as well and got them to do the same thing. And with that, and we run a bit of Facebook advertising, within, that 18-month period, we've got clients in every state.
Yeah, amazing. And you're right, the Centrelink rules are the same around the country, mostly, so long as they're not local lockdowns, but they're pretty much the same around the country. Correct. So it's not like you have to be limited to South Australia.
No, and I think the other thing is as well, once clients know they're happy to use you, and my theory was when I set this business up, look, everyone will want to see you. Everyone will want to do it on video and away you go. And I've had 2 clients that have said, can we do a video call? Oh, sure. And this is probably more the older clients, most of the older clients, can we just do it on the phone? And away you go. It's been phone calls and hence the hours on the phone, but it's been phone calls. It hasn't been video. Locally, we get some people that come into the office and we've got some that just say, no, tell us what you need. We'll get it to you and away you go from there.
Yeah, nice. And of course, being location independent means that you can take on staff from anywhere around the country?
Correct. Yeah, so I've got somebody that does some work for me interstate, which helps a lot. They worked for Centrelink for a while, and that certainly helps, and that knowledge helps. And again, it's about building that knowledge database. So when we do bring people on, I'm not worried about where people sit. I'd rather, I was speaking to a BDM's assistant the other day, and they said, look, if you're looking for CSOs or anything like that, just give them flexibility. Tell them they can work from home. Tell them they can be there. So long as the data security is there and all those other things, then it's fine. You don't need to be in the office. Yeah. The office is good, but if it's a deal breaker for somebody, then so be it.
Yeah, predominantly if it's over the phone, then it could be anywhere. And it's really interesting. And so I'm going to go on a limb here and say, when you find somebody that's really good in Centrelink and they want to get out of Centrelink, there's an opportunity for them with you?
Yeah, there's about 10 opportunities here right now.
Yes. When you get hold of somebody good, but you still need some good people in Centrelink to be on the other end of the phone for you.
Yeah. But yeah.
So tell us about the future then. What's installed? Have you thought about too far ahead? Are you looking in the next 6 months, or are you looking, out into the wilderness?
Yeah, the next 12 months we'll probably double again. So I'll probably be bringing in next year. The aim is to put on another 2 staff, whether that's full-time, part-time. We'll wait and see, but that's probably where it needs to be, just with the level of stuff coming in. And it's probably expanding out and probably hitting some more of the accounting firms, some of the lawyers.
Yep.
More targeted, I guess,
So will you be spending your time around business development, talking to professionals, and some of your time in sort of the complex assessment places?
Absolutely.
Or is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and that would be ideal. I've got at the stage now where in a lot of cases we can generally assess whether a client's going to be eligible in 10, 15 minutes on the phone. They can tell us sort of relatively closely what they've got, and we can do a quick calculation and say, yes, you're eligible. Okay, let's get this done, and then we'll interview you over the phone. Just taking away that interview just saves 45 minutes of my time. It's better somebody else be doing that rather than me. It's good for the client interaction, but I've got to be realistic with it over the long term as well.
Yeah. And so when the advisors work with you, do they just say, oh, can you ring this client? Or do they go through a situation and then get you to do the work and then come back to the client and say, here's where it's at?
Yeah, a bit of both. So I've got some advisors, an advisor emailed me the other day and said, look, this client's just sold his business. What's he going to be eligible for? Can he get anything? Can you get a healthcare card? I said, yeah, we can get him a healthcare card. I said, but we could also put him on job seeker. He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, if he's not working, he's not age pension age. I said, if he's happy to go and do some volunteering, then we can put him on job seeker. And you could sort of hear the advisors like, oh, well, that'll save him 13 grand a year drawing out of his super and allocated pensions. He's like, okay. He said, let me speak to the client and I'll just send the client to you. He said, we don't want to touch it. We don't want to do it. But if you're certain that's what it is, here's the phone number. Away you go. I've got other advisors that say, look, can you just jump in so we can get access to their online system in terms of through nominee access, we can get access to it. And they say, look, can you just jump in and fix this client or do this? We'll give you most of the information. We'll tell the client that you're the person implementing it. And if you spend that time just interviewing the client or getting what you need from the client, we're happy. We're happy to take the ongoing updates and bits and pieces, but we just don't want to spend the time doing the claim.
Yeah.
And then we'll just invoice the advisor and not the client.
Yeah, right. Okay. So you just invoice the advisor then makes that part of their ongoing service or whatever it might be. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Kevin, for coming on and chatting to us today. If somebody wanted to continue the conversation, what would be the best way for them to find you?
Look, flick me an email. Kevin at Pension Services was probably the easiest one, at .com.au. Pick up the mobile or the 1300 number. It's on the website. So pensionservices.com.au and go from there. But yeah, first instance, email is usually pretty good because sometimes, I'm stuck on the phone to Centrelink.
Yeah. Email is always good, or jump on LinkedIn as well. You're on LinkedIn. Yep. You've got your all your details there. So, hey, thanks for coming and chatting to us. There's some amazing stories that you and I have spoken about over time about just some of the outcomes that's been available for clients. So I think it's something that and most advisors don't want to do it. So, and again, it makes a massive difference in the stress levels of many clients. Correct. So appreciate it.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you very much.